So I came from a background in conducting cybersecurity operations in a large law enforcement organisation. And the interesting differentiator compared to other organisations is that the broader operational organisation has the mandate to pursue in terms of cybercrime. So effectively looking at the opportunities to take threat intelligence and cybersecurity kind of incident response and start to build an initial case for cybercrime investigations is a really interesting area. Cybersecurity specialists can complement cybercrime officers and cybercrime investigators in quite a unique and insightful way. So actually there's quite a lot of opportunity for shared capability, shared tooling and responsiveness within those organisations. And actually, as you're starting to see with the advent of a national lead for cybercrime and their own background in cybersecurity kind of responses and operations, their involvement in cybersecurity incidents for critical national infrastructure especially, you're really starting to see the synergies between them establishing. For what used to be called kind of e-crime, there's always been specialist organisations, specialist conferences and material around it, and starting to see the broader application for organisations that have national security, kind of counter fraud and kind of law and justice as part of the core ethics and culture of the organisation. So actually we've seen increasing drives from elements of financial services and other regulated bodies looking to take their own cybersecurity response measures and directly contribute to law enforcement investigative activities following it. So it's actually a really interesting time for partnering for law enforcement, because actually there are organisations looking to combat cybercrime more directly, and where they don't have the mandate or remit to do so, what they are keen to do is use their logs, their tooling, the intelligence that they're gathering to support those activities, because the way to reduce cybercrime overall is to contribute to law enforcement operations against them. Law enforcement has an interesting relationship with cybersecurity. So unsurprisingly, law enforcement organisations are not popular with cyber criminals, and actually quite often see organised criminal gangs and kind of capable cyber threat actors looking to take action against them to disrupt operation investigations and proceedings, which is kind of par for the course for law enforcement, but is quite a surprise to new commercial organisations when they generally get involved in that space. We've also seen law enforcement being targeted in a limited extent by foreign intelligence services and kind of hostile nation states, not necessarily for the direct impact on their services, but because most law enforcement agencies have a link to the intelligence communities for their respective nations, all that national security element, and therefore in a kind of a supply chain attack model are a potential gateway, or considered a potential gateway to onward higher security and higher sensitivity systems. It's also quite interesting because obviously law enforcement generally has to deal with other people's cyber incidents, so they're expected to be able to deploy specialist investigative capability and expert response into environments they don't own, control or operate. So there's been much more of a focus around looking at the interoperability of kind of tooling and capability, where you can kind of take that with you as part of supporting activity, be that from a digital forensics standpoint and kind of a post-breach or post-incident model, but also in terms of some active response. So for ongoing cyber incidents, being able to have your local law enforcement support activities can be quite powerful. So yeah, it's been quite interesting in terms of the types of attacks and threats they see. It's typically what most enterprise sees in terms of denial of service is very popular across those controls. Attempted ransomware and threatware, which is mostly directed at disrupting operations rather than the potential resale value of the data. It's more about disrupting the ability to take actions and operations within it. But in that regard, they receive most of the kind of threat landscape that broader public sector and some of industry does. The thing that tends to strike people as unusual is the volumes that they see. Most law enforcement organisations have quite far-reaching infrastructures and attract interest from a large variety of threat actors, and so generally see volumes comparable to significantly larger organisations. So under the auspices of the National Police Chiefs Council and their cyber security and cybercrime kind of specialisms. A lot of law enforcement is focused around the NIST cybersecurity framework as the baseline for their cyber operations. It's a really good choice of framework because it's very operationally focused, and in that regard it allows the cybersecurity teams to very much align with their operational colleagues, and so it kind of translates into those recognizable business kind of response investigation models significantly well. For more mature organisations, the full NIST 800 standard around information security has become quite prevalent and is generally displacing kind of ISO 27001 and others as preferred standards. Again, it's very operationally focused and goes into quite a lot of detail, and it's also got synergies into equivalent functions in defence, national security, intelligence, etc. So it gives them that transferability of information. And you're starting to see through commercial arrangements, alignment and adherence to those standards start to come out in commercial contracts, but certainly it's an area where they're seeing a lot of synergy with financial services, highly regulated sectors and others for whom kind of reputational impact and the ability to kind of transact with confidence is one of the kind of key metrics. You're starting to see a lot of focus around those kind of standards. Beyond that, most of the standards work is currently focusing around interoperability and understanding that the approach to adopting the procedural and policy-based controls that most of those organisations required is not based around technology, and actually what you need to establish is standards and frameworks that allow you to meet the standard regardless of the platform and solutions that you use to do so.